Good morning. Anthony DeMello was a Catholic priest, a psychotherapist and a spiritual director. He was also a collector of stories, and he used those stories in his teaching, in his writing and his work with people. One of the stories he tells is of a father who goes and knocks on his son's bedroom door one morning and says, Jamie, it's time to get up. You've got to get ready for school." "Oh, Papa, I don't want to go to school." But Jamie, you've got to. So come on, get up. Why don't you want to go to school?" "Well, Papa, I'll give you 3 reasons. It's boring. The kids pick on me and tease me, and I don't like it." "Well, Jamie, let me give you 3 reasons why you've got to go. It's your duty, you're 45 years old, and you're the principal." Mello goes on to talk about being awake and being asleep. And he says, like Jamie, most people are asleep. They live their lives asleep. They're born, they marry and have kids and work and die in their sleep, never fully embracing the depth of life that is available to them, never fully blooming and becoming the person they are and created to be, never really living in the moment of wonder. And Tony Campolo, the Baptist preacher and sociologist, speaks of this in another story. He says that he began this course, university course called something to do with sociology and existentialism, some great long title. Anyway, he's lecturing on the first day. He welcomes the students, gives a brief introduction to the course. And then he goes to the guy in the front row and he says, "Son, tell me, how long have you been alive?" And the young bloke looks, I'm 22 years old. 22 years. And the Campolo says, No, I didn't ask you how long your heart's been beating in your chest. I said, how long have you lived? How long have you been alive? And he looks confused, and the other students look confused, and Campolo steps back and says, "Let me tell you a story. When I was in the 9th grade, our class went to New York City, and we saw some of the sights of New York City. And one of the things we did was to go to the top of the Empire State Building, up onto the observation deck, and to look around at this vista of New York City sprawled out around us to get this wonderful, brilliant sight. But we were teenage boys and more interested in chasing girls and mucking around, and that's what we were doing. And I missed the sight until one moment I came close to the edge where the fence is, the rail around the observation deck, and I stood up and I looked out and I caught a glimpse of this vista, the Hudson River and all the sights of New York spread out, and my breath was caught and I was filled with wonder and my senses were alive, and for this moment I felt wow, and I was alive in the moment. A feeling I'll never forget as long as I live. I was alive. And when he'd finished speaking, the young boy looked up and said, "Well, when you put it like that, Doc, I've maybe been alive several minutes in my 22 years. And this sense of being alive, of being awake, fills the writings of spirituality writers and authors throughout history. And it's the language that Paul uses when he writes to the church in Rome. He's already invited them to encourage them to not be conformed to the ways of this world, the ways of accumulation of power and wealth and greed, the ways of violence or prestige or competition to gain more and push people away, the ways of vengeance and revenge and retaliation, abuse and violence, all those kinds of ways of being drawn into the expectations to conform to society and live in its ways, particularly under the empire. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, he says. And he goes on and he talks about a body. The gathering of the people is like a body where all the parts have their part, their place to play. People of all abilities are brought together and share their wisdom and their voice and their experiences in their life. And then he goes on and he starts to talk about some of the 10 commandments, those that are related to relationship, connections of people, bringing people together, living peacefully and harmoniously together, sharing life together and wisdom. And he speaks of this way of love. Echoing Jesus' words when he says the great commandment is to love God with all that you are and your neighbour as yourself. And Paul says, love. Love is the key to all this. Love your neighbour as yourself. Fill your life with love for the other and for self. Not proud, egotistical love, but love that seeks the best in the well-being, that listens to the deep yearning of your being and seeks to express it in love towards other people. Because that's the way of life. And he talks about waking up. He says, look, the time is short. Wake up. Don't live in the flow and expectations of a culture and a society in which you live. Don't let other people crowd you out and tell you what you should do or shouldn't do. Don't be conformed to the violence and need for revenge, but be reconciled with people. Be in relationship with people. Live in the way of love, not the ways of unlove and violence and exclusion. But be people who make peace. People who draw others together and share the well-being of everyone. And I think in this way of love, in this time, churches and other groups around the world are drawn into a program called Seasons of Creation, where for this month of September, thinking about the earth and the creatures that share the earth with us, its wonder and its beauty, and our role in caring for and stewarding the earth, recognising our need for the earth, but that our lifestyles and our culture abuse the earth and draw out everything we can, and that other species are suffering and the earth is warming up. Loving your neighbour as yourself is loving the earth and caring for the earth, of doing something that will keep the earth well for generations into the future and looks after the earth and other peoples that are suffering because already the ocean levels are rising, those Pacific islands are struggling. But it's loving your neighbour is also about giving voice to the powerless and the voiceless, those who are silenced. It's about giving a voice to other people, the downtrodden and the persecuted, those cultures and parts of our culture that are lost in the dominant powers that control everything. And we're talking about giving a voice to the Indigenous people, to hear their wisdom, the way they relate to the earth that we can learn from, to learn from their wisdom and their culture and allow their wisdom to shine through and be reflected in the decisions that are made for our nation. To give a voice to the powerless of this earth and hear their wisdom. These are all the kinds of things that Paul is saying. Wake up. People, wake up. The time is short. Don't live deluded lives, but live the best lives you can. Live the lives of love and grace that flows from deep within, the yearning within. Allow it to come out, expressed, even if it is against the culture and against the grain, against the flow. Be true to who you really are. De Mello was also, another story he tells, he was gathered with a group of people that had formed a foundation around his work to disseminate his teaching and his work and to support it. And it was particularly important after his death. But at this gathering, he's giving thanks to people. And he tells another story. He says a farmer was out walking and he finds this egg, and it's warm, it's an eagle's egg, and there's no nest, so he puts it in his pocket and rushes back. He puts it under one of his hens that's lying on her eggs, and the eggs hatch, including the eagle's egg. And the eagle grows up with the hen, teaching it how to be a chicken. And it learns how to be a chicken, pecking in the yard and clucking around and flapping its wings and flying a few feet and then falling down again. And as it grows old one day, it looks up in the sky and there's this great bird with big wings gliding on the air currents, up and down and all around, glowing in the sun and beautiful. And it's mesmerised by this sight and it says, wow! It says to its neighbour, wow, look at that, what's that? The neighbour looks up and says, oh, that's an eagle, king of the sky, king of the birds, isn't it wonderful, magnificent? But we're just chickens. And they go back to pecking in the barnyard. And then Tony De Mello turns to the president of this foundation, a dear friend. He says, that's you. That's your story. And he wasn't sure whether to be offended and put out or hurt, but he knew Tony Tony DeMello, and he would not hurt anyone. He only spoke in love. And he realised that what Tony was saying was, you're really an eagle. You have great gifts and skills and wonder. Fly, soar, be who you can. Don't be limited to being a hen in the barnyard when you can soar in the sky. Go for it, my friend. You are great. And I think in a sense that's what Paul is saying. Be who you are created to be. Live the life that you can live. Live it fully and freely. Not in the ways that the world would determine, but in these ways of love, of grace, of God. The way that Jesus invites us into. Let's live. Live and be awake.